Every single generation genuinely believes it's going to handle money differently than the one that came directly before it. And every generation, on average, ends up making the exact same mistake, just with a different price tag attached to it. Spending grows exactly as fast as income does, so the gap between the two never actually opens up. This is the one mistake that shows up at every income level and every age bracket in the data, and understanding the mechanism behind it is the only real way to actually break it. Quick one before we get into this. If breaking down patterns like this is useful, hit subscribe, new video every week. It's tempting to assume this is a discipline problem, that some people are simply better at resisting the pull to spend more. The research behind this video doesn't really support that framing. The mechanisms driving lifestyle inflation operate below the level of a single willpower decision, which is exactly why trying harder rarely fixes it on its own, and why the actual fixes in this video are mechanical, not motivational. Lifestyle inflation, sometimes called lifestyle creep, is the tendency for spending to rise automatically as income rises. A raise doesn't sit in a savings account waiting to be invested. It quietly disappears into a bigger apartment, a newer car, more dining out, or a few extra recurring subscriptions, each individually reasonable, collectively absorbing the entire increase. The dangerous part isn't any single purchase, it's that this happens automatically, without a conscious decision. Someone's income can genuinely double over the course of a decade while their actual savings rate stays exactly where it started the whole time, because every single dollar of each raise quietly found a new, entirely reasonable place to go before it ever had the chance to reach an investment account instead. The documented fix here is specific and genuinely mechanical, not motivational. Commit in advance to saving 50% of every future raise, automatically, before adjusting day-to-day spending at all. The remaining other half stays genuinely available to enjoy right away. A real and legitimate lifestyle upgrade, just never the entire increase all at once, which is precisely what actually lets savings grow steadily alongside income instead of getting permanently left behind by it every single time. Underneath lifestyle inflation is a psychological mechanism called hedonic adaptation. New purchases feel exciting for a short period, then return to an emotional baseline. A brand new $60,000 car genuinely feels completely ordinary again after roughly 3 months on average, according to the research behind this exact pattern. The upgrade itself was completely real. The lasting happiness that was supposed to come with it mostly wasn't. This is exactly why the upgrade treadmill never actually satisfies anyone for very long. Each new purchase resets to the same baseline within weeks or months, which is what pushes people toward the next purchase instead of noticing the pattern. Research consistently and repeatedly shows that experiences, like travel or a shared meal with close friends, deliver meaningfully longer-lasting happiness than material things do, precisely because they simply don't trigger the exact same fast adaptation response that a physical upgrade reliably does. A genuinely fair question worth asking here is whether any of this actually improves with age, or whether it's a young person's mistake that older generations eventually outgrow. The CFPB publishes a financial well-being score from 0 to 100, broken down by age bracket, which is the closest available proxy for tracking this, worth being precise here, since it's age bracket data collected at one point in time, not the same people tracked across decades as they literally age from Gen Z into Gen X. With that caveat in mind, here's what the data actually shows. Ages 18 to 24 average a score of 51. Ages 25 to 34, also 51. Ages 35 to 44, 52. Ages 45 to 54, 54, matching the overall U.S. average. Ages 55 to 64, 55. Ages 65 to 74, 61, the single highest bracket measured anywhere in this dataset. And 75 and older, 60. Read that curve carefully. It climbs, but slowly, and it never gets dramatically high at any age. Even retirees specifically, a group that has entirely finished earning and is now simply living off whatever they already built, average only 60 out of a possible 100. If lifestyle inflation genuinely resolved itself automatically with age or accumulated experience alone, This entire curve would look meaningfully different than it actually does here. It's worth walking through what this actually looks like at each life stage, since the mechanism is identical even though the dollar figures involved look completely different. For someone early in their career, the first real raise usually means a nicer apartment, a few new subscriptions, and more frequent takeout. Individually small, collectively enough to keep a savings rate near zero even as income climbs steadily for the first time. A decade or two later, the same pattern shows up wearing bigger numbers: a larger home than strictly needed, a second car, private lessons, or activities for kids that quietly multiply. None of these are frivolous on their own. They're often genuinely reasonable choices for the life stage, but stacked together, they absorb a raise just as completely as a subscription list did at 24. Even in retirement, the pattern doesn't fully disappear, it just changes shape one more time, showing up as travel, dining out, or lifestyle spending that rises to meet whatever a pension, Social Security, or withdrawal income actually provides. The CFPB score for retirees, at 60 out of 100, reflects genuine improvement over younger brackets, but it's a long way from suggesting the mistake has been fully solved by that point either. Part of why this pattern is so hard to break at any age is present bias, the tendency to overvalue immediate rewards compared to distant ones. New shoes feel real and immediate. Retirement, or even next year, feels abstract and far away, so it consistently loses the comparison in the moment a spending decision actually gets made. The documented fix removes the decision from the moment it's weakest, automates savings, so the transfer happens the instant a paycheck lands, before the money is ever visible as spendable. The comparison between spend now and save for later only works against saving when it's actively being made in real time. Automation takes that comparison out of the equation entirely. Lifestyle inflation rarely happens in isolation. It's frequently driven by comparison to neighbors, coworkers, or social media, a pattern often called keeping up with the Joneses. Social comparison is a wired and human tendency, not a personal character flaw or a modern weakness, which is exactly why it shows up consistently across every single generation covered in this video, rather than being specific to any one of them alone. Social media adds a modern accelerant this comparison never used to have: a constant, curated feed of other people's newest purchases and best moments, seen dozens of times a day instead of occasionally at a neighborhood barbecue. The documented countermeasure is straightforward. Even if it's uncomfortable to act on, unfollow aspirational accounts that consistently trigger comparison spending and deliberately shift focus toward net worth, the number that's actually building or shrinking, instead of visible spending, which only ever tells half the story. Lifestyle inflation used to mean visible upgrades: a bigger apartment, a nicer car. A newer, quieter version has emerged alongside it: subscription creep, where multiple small $10 to $20 monthly charges accumulate without ever being reviewed as a group. The average American spends $219 a month on subscriptions, but when asked to estimate that number without checking, guesses only $86, a gap of well over $130 a month between the real cost sitting on a statement and the perceived one sitting in memory. Worse, the average American wastes $32.84 a month specifically on subscriptions they don't actually use anymore, services signed up for once, and simply never canceled. The documented fix is a quarterly audit. Pull up every recurring charge on a card statement once every 3 months and actually decide, deliberately, whether each one still earns its place. It's worth putting a real number on that subscription gap instead of leaving it as an abstract monthly figure. That $133 a month difference between what people think they spend on subscriptions and what they actually spend, invested instead at the S&P 500's historical average return of about 10.5% used elsewhere in this batch, grows to roughly $334,700 over 30 years. That's not the value of canceling every subscription, it's specifically the value of closing the gap between the guess and the reality. Even just the narrower slice, the $32.84 a month wasted specifically on subscriptions nobody's actually using anymore, reaches about $82,600 over the same 30 years, or roughly $26,600 over 20 years. This is the exact same mechanism as lifestyle inflation, just small enough and automatic enough that most people never notice it's happening at all. The downstream consequence of unaddressed lifestyle inflation shows up in two connected statistics. 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck at some point, regardless of income level. A figure that includes plenty of people earning well above the median, not just those on tight, low incomes. And the average U.S. household carries a credit card balance of $6,501, often the direct result of spending that quietly outpaced income for long enough that the gap had to be financed somehow. Two households can earn the identical income and end up in completely different financial positions, purely based on how much of every raise got absorbed by rising spending versus how much got redirected somewhere that actually compounds. Income explains far less of the outcome than most people assume. The redirect rate explains most of it. One fair caveat before the fixes: not every spending increase that follows a raise is actually lifestyle inflation. Moving because a family genuinely outgrew a space or upgrading a car that was already breaking down are real needs, not the automatic absorption this video is describing. The distinction that matters is whether a purchase followed a genuine change in circumstances, or simply followed the raise itself, on a schedule that had nothing to do with need. There's a specific justification that makes lifestyle inflation feel not just acceptable but earned. A raise or promotion is framed internally as proof of effort, which makes spending it feel like a reward rather than a decision with a real opportunity cost attached. I worked hard for this raise is true, and also, quietly, exactly the sentence that makes the entire increase feel like it belongs to spending rather than to the future. This is a second, independent reason the 50% automatic split works better than a willpower-based decision made after the money already feels earned and spendable. It removes half of the raise from that justification entirely, before the "I deserve this" narrative ever gets applied to the full amount. None of this is an argument for never enjoying a raise or upgrading anything, ever. It's an argument for a deliberate split, not an automatic one. Save roughly half of every increase before letting the other half improve day-to-day life, and lean toward experiences over things when spending the enjoyable half, since those hold their emotional value longer per the research already covered. Combined with automated savings and a quarterly subscription audit. This doesn't require dramatic willpower or a complete lifestyle overhaul. It requires a handful of small, mechanical habits, put in place once, that keep working in the background regardless of which generation is running them or how large the next raise turns out to be. Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, and Boomers aren't actually four different money stories. They're the same mechanism, playing out at four different price points, decades apart. The generation that finally breaks the pattern won't be the one that earns the most. It'll be the one that automates the habit before the next raise even lands. It's worth closing with what this habit is actually worth in dollars, not just in principle. Someone who consistently redirects just $250 a month of raises into investments, a modest, realistic slice of a career's worth of increases, reaches roughly $202,600 after 20 years, or about $629,100 after 30, at the same 10.5% average return used throughout this batch. That's the entire value of this video, expressed as one number, not a dramatic sacrifice, just a redirect, compounding quietly in the background for decades. If there's one question worth carrying out of this video, it's this. For any new spending after a raise, did you actually decide it, or did it just happen automatically, the way a raise usually does? That one distinction, asked honestly and consistently, does more to interrupt this pattern than any specific budgeting system could on its own. Spending rising automatically with income, hedonic adaptation resetting satisfaction within months, present bias favoring right now over later, social comparison amplified by social media. And subscription creep quietly, adding over $130 a month nobody accounts for. It's the same mistake wearing 5 different disguises at every age bracket the data actually measures. The fix isn't more willpower. It's automating the split before the money is ever visible enough to spend, and asking the one honest question before any new spending gets to feel automatic instead of chosen. This video is for educational purposes only and is not personalized financial advice. If seeing this pattern laid out clearly, maybe for the first time, was genuinely useful to you, go ahead and subscribe. New video every single week. Next time on the channel, what the data actually says about the so-called disappearing middle class and whether that framing even holds up.